Hey, what's up? Welcome to English Mania. My name is Antonia Armakar and today we'll compare should and ought to. First of all, grammatically speaking, we need to understand that should is a modal verb. What does it mean? It means that we use it without the particle to when there's a verb after it. So we say, we should go home now, it's really late. Should go. We don't say should to go like in the sentence, I want to go home. In addition, should doesn't have any other tense forms. There's just one form, should, and that's it. And finally, when we create a question or a negative sentence, we do not need any auxiliary verbs. So we use should as an auxiliary verb. And therefore we have, should we go home now or stay? I think we shouldn't get into his hair. No auxiliary verbs necessary. So should is a modal verb, while ought to is a semi-modal verb. On the one hand, you need to use the particle to after it. We ought to go home now. But on the other hand, we do not need any auxiliary verbs. Ought we to go home now? And moreover, we do not need the ending s in present simple. She ought to help him. The same goes for should. She should help him. We can often use either should or ought to talk about obligations and recommendations. Your boss might say to you, you should finish your work before you go home. Or, you ought to finish your work before you go home. There is a tiny difference here, however. When you use the verb should, you presuppose that it is your opinion. You think so. The speaker thinks like that. But when you use ought to, it is more neutral and you talk about some general obligation. So, the circumstances make us do something. We also use should and ought to talk about probability. But here, ought to is not that common. She should be ready by now. Wonder where she is. I think she's ready, but I'm not sure. Let's take a look at several examples with the semi-modal verb ought to. We ought to do more exercise. You oughtn't to speak to your father like this. Notice, we don't use the auxiliary verb. We don't say you don't ought to. You oughtn't to speak to your father like that. Ought she to call the police? Once again, no auxiliary verb and no ending s. However, I need to point out that ought is mostly used in statements. It's not that common in questions and negative sentences. Better use should in questions and negative sentences. And all in all, should is more common. Ought to is a little bit more formal. And it's not usually used a lot in writing. We also prefer should when we deal with some recommendations from outside authorities. The sign says you should kill the motor before you fill up the tank. In addition, when we give some advice using the pronoun I, better use should or would. I should leave early tomorrow if I were you. I would leave early tomorrow if I were you. It's a very important interview. We use the construction should or ought to plus a perfect infinitive to talk about the past. What is a perfect infinitive? Here we use the auxiliary verb have plus a past participle of the full verb. Should have done something or ought to have done something. So we use this construction to talk about something that didn't happen in the past, and we are sorry that it didn't. Everyone knows that this is a very busy restaurant. We should have made a reservation. We ought to have made a reservation. Here there is some additional meaning of regret and a little bit of criticism. You should have come. She was so angry that you didn't. You ought to have come. Or we can use a negative form. You shouldn't have come. She was so angry. She is always angry. It doesn't matter what you do. And one more use here. When somebody gives you a gift, you can say, "Oh, you shouldn't have. Thank you." Like you shouldn't have bought it. You shouldn't have bothered to buy me a gift. So it's a kind of a set expression which people say, but they don't actually mean it. We also use this construction to talk about an expectation that something happened, has happened, or will happen. If the flight was on time, he should have arrived in London early this morning. Or he ought to have arrived in London early this morning. Also possible. Okay, that's it for today. I hope that now you do not confuse should and ought to. You will avoid making common mistakes with these words. And if you have any questions, as usual, write a comment. I will try to answer as soon as possible. Make sure to like this video and share. It will help me a lot. It is really important. So please press the button. Also subscribe if you want to continue studying English with me. And I hope to see you soon. Happy English and Russian practice. Bye!